Order. Before we begin, I'd like to ask everyone to please mute your phones and your computers until you're called on to address the board. I'd like to ask that if you do address the board, you please identify yourself, your name, your title, your institution, etc. I'd also like to announce that Lori Griffin has resigned from the Higher Education Coordinating Board. Lori has served with dedication and passion for the past 5 years, and she will be missed by the board. We thank her for her service. At that time, I will turn it over to the Finance Committee. Mr. Hooper.
Thank you, Al. Agenda item information, item number 9, it's a maintenance policy review. Beginning on page 9, page 9-1 of the agenda book. Mr. Nick Fuller is going to provide background for this item.
Good morning. This is a request that was made at the last board meeting for me to present the maintenance policy for your review. This policy was approved in 2010 that set aside any of the bond or loan feasibility items that are presented to you that for a new building, new facility, an institution has to set aside a certain amount per square foot to cover maintenance costs of that new building. And so the current amount to be set aside is $2.50 per square foot. And in reviewing the APPA report, the most recent report that was done was in 2019, and it showed a current average cost per square foot of $1.84. If you, it's not in the manual, but on the slide that's probably behind you. I did put the chart in there that we got from the report that shows that maintenance cost per square foot kind of varied from 2014. It was $1.70 per square foot and went down for a few years and then back up to $1.84 in 2019. But even calculating out, were to include the price index inflation changes to that amount, which are 1.9% in 2020 and 2.7% in 21, it would put us at $1.93 per square foot on cost. And we're still asking them to set aside $2.50. So we're still well above that cost being set aside. And we will continue to monitor that. And so if we continue to grow on that cost, we can look at revisiting this policy to update that dollar amount in the future.
Or are we going to be reactive to this proactive?
Hopefully proactive, unless there's a enormous jump in.
First off, is
Sure. It is the Association of Physical Plant Administrators for the various campuses. They have an association.
But my point in that is my personal experience.
Sure.
Building costs and materials have gone up way more than what the normal inflation since 2005.
Yes, sir.
You agree with that?
Best I can tell, as the only factors that I have to be able to comprehensively use to adjust.
I understand. That's why, you know, we want to be proactive, we want to be reactive. Because I think that, can y'all hear me? Okay, I just want to make sure. I didn't want to. I can pick this up if I need to. I forgot about it. But is that better? Okay, thank you. But I just want to make sure that we don't get behind on these maintenance issues for these buildings. And so now my next question is to you is, so what about the auxiliary buildings that we're only doing $1.25 a square foot?
I do not have a separate cost for those on the report for the auxiliary.
Would there be one, you think?
I have not found one, a separate.
So
charge.
we're behind on that.
Those could be included in that average cost in the report.
Okay.
They're not differentiated out between on the campuses in the report.
Okay. So
Those could be, you're right, we could be behind on setting aside that, but that's, the auxiliary funded, there should be the funds to generate to be able to support those buildings themselves as is, rather than taking from your tuition and fees or anything to support the other buildings.
So do you have any kind of recommendation on that at this point in time?
I don't have a recommendation to make a change to it at this point.
Good.
As you said, we can continually monitor that and update, each
So
quarter
how-
whether we should.
Yeah,
Look
how
at
would
that.
we make a change to it?
We would propose a change to that maintenance board policy. I could bring you the data each time and you can recommend a change that I can bring to you for approval on the policy at any of the board meetings.
Okay.
Mr. Fuller, how do we get, tell me that rate on the auxiliary buildings
It's $1.25 per square foot.
and in each of those buildings, some portion of the proceeds from whatever revenue from that building goes to that. How do we get any more data on whether that's floating or a percentage of auxiliary buildings on campuses?
I can query the institution and get some information back from them for you.
I'd love to see that. I think that's valuable information, especially if we know the rate we're asking for is below what we just published here on the slide.
Yes, sir.
I think that's invaluable information. I'd love to see
Okay.
that.
Any other questions? All right. Action item number 10, a report on intercollegiate athletic revenues and expenditures for 2021-22. Again, Mr. Nick Fuller, background, please.
Yes, sir. And this is a follow-up to what would be the presentation that you saw in the July meeting. The July meeting is for the current year budget for athletic expenditures. This report is of the expenses from last fiscal year for fiscal 22. In 21-22 fiscal year, athletic expenditures for the four-year institutions was $216.9 million and $3.04 million for the two-year colleges. This is an increase of 28.2% over 2021. I would say that large of an increase would be due to people coming back to the sporting events after COVID. 20 and 21 saw a sharp decline. So it's just returning back to normal is why the expenses shot up so much. The first slide here shows all of the revenues by the various sources. We have this split out between all of the institutions and then all institutions excluding the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. That was done at the request of the board, I believe 2 years ago. And the next slide also shows expenditures by the various sources. Again, split out between all institutions and all institutions excluding Fayetteville. The ADHE staff recommends approval of this item.
As a chair, in the increase related to
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you have tremendously more fans showing back up to sporting events. You have more travel going to those various events that we did not have in the year that a lot of events were canceled due to the pandemic. That's why we saw such a sharp decline in the year previous to that. I don't know that it would be below, but it would probably be between 2 to 5% rather than almost 30 on changes somewhere. The increases have not been near this drastic in prior years. In year-over-year expenses. Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
in the scholarship area. I see the percent of total, but what kind of increase do we see in there for the shared scholarships, athletic scholarships? I don't see that here.
The year over year in scholarships, I don't have that broken out specifically. I can get that information for you shortly and get it back to you.
It's on page 10. Is it on page 10 at the bottom? Or page 5, so
Page 5,
at the bottom.
expenditures by source, second line.
It's the second.
Yeah, that's the current year. I don't have the previous year's scholarship total to compare to.
Dr. Cash's point, the 28% increase in revenues, would we see the majority of that come in that top line on the revenues by source, the athletic general income? Is if it's people returning back to sports, is that where that would get?
Yes, sir. Between that and the, the other athletic income would also probably see an adjustment there.
And then every year I ask this, and every year I have to have you remind me the percentage of unrestricted E and G funds that each institution is allowed to transfer.
I believe that is 2%, or sorry, 2% of their budget of their E and G tuition and fee revenue, or a set amount that's determined by the department, which is adjusted each year for the consumer price index.
And if I remember correctly, in years past, all institutions in the state but one virtually max that out. Is that true again this year?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion to recommend to the full board the approval of the review of the report on intercollegiate athletic revenues and expenditures for 2021-22?
So then.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye. Information item number 11. The bond loan feasibility update begins on page 11-1 of the agenda book. Mr. Fuller.
This is an update on the actual terms for the bond and loan issues that have received approval by you all over the past year from October of 21 until today. So any of them that have been approved since last October, this is a report of the terms for the interest rates and the maximum amount of those. And you should be able to see that on page 11-1 in the actual agenda book.
Any questions on information item number 11? Okay. Action item number 11B, economic feasibility of loan issue for Southeast Arkansas College. Mr. Fuller.
This is going to be an item for a loan for up to $5 million with a term of up to 20 years at a rate of approximately 4.75%. It's going to be used for educational and general purposes with revenues coming from tuition and fee revenue. Proceeds from this issue will be to fund several energy cost reduction measures that were identified by an investment grade audit performed in cooperation with the Arkansas Energy Office and the Energy Performance Contracting Program. ADHE staff does recommend approval of this item, and representatives from the institution should be here available if you have any questions. Yes, sir.
So do you have any idea, and that's probably more for them than you, Nick? I was just wondering what the return was on this.
Good morning, board members. Stephen Bloomberg, President, Southeast Arkansas College. Then your questions as the terms.
Yeah, just, I mean, you're using it for energy savings measures. I just want what the return on the investment was.
Yep, good question. So infrastructure, as you all know, is one of the most critical elements on any of our campuses. And I appreciate your conversation earlier about maintenance. Typically, institutions don't talk a lot about infrastructure, but honestly, if spaces aren't conditioned correctly, if security systems aren't adequate, then we're at a disadvantage in providing a safe environment for our faculty, staff, and students. So our performance energy contract over 20 years is going to yield approximately $3 million in energy savings. It will yield about $8 million in deferred capital. So what that means is over 20 years, if we were to piece out this project, we will avoid a capital cost of about $8 million. You say, well, look, you're spending $6 million, your ROI is $3 million. One of the things that I'll point out to the coordinating board is $2.5 million of that is security system upgrades. So obviously there is really no energy savings from security system upgrades, but to give you a very quick idea, right now our campus security cameras are obsolete. Their dot per inch is not good. The density is not good. With this particular project, we will have camera coverage on 99.9% of all 250,000 square feet in our buildings. We'll have 99.9% coverage in all of our parking lots. We'll also have building access controls. So again, in the event of any kind of emergency, whatever that may be, we'll be able to lock our buildings with the push of a button on a phone on an app. And so 2.5 million is not energy savings. It's just that the Arkansas Energy Performance Office allows us to include that in this. So it helps the college to bundle all this together. If we remove that, then the ROI becomes a lot better. But I want to make sure the board does understand that we know that the ROI doesn't look as good because it is 3 million over 20 years. But again, a significant part of this project is also security system upgrades that we really do need.
Mr. Question, just did it help your insurance rates at all with the improvements and potential improvements in security system? Will it help your insurance?
It should help that for our general coverages. So that should reduce our insurance footprint. It will also obviously help with our energy costs as well. As a part of this, we're constructing a solar field where a majority of our electric will be now done through solar. Because of the recent Inflation Reduction Act that you may recall Congress passed, there's some tax credits that are coming back to the institution in the amount of about $500,000. So we were able to take advantage of that. But not only insurance costs lower because of the transition to LED lights inside and outside, our utility costs will be greatly reduced every year. So we're looking about 25 to 30% because there will also be building access controls. If you're familiar with that, it means when you leave a room or you're in a room, the lights automatically come on and go off. It seems like a small thing, but when you have 250,000 square feet of indoor space that doesn't have that, quite frankly, we're wasting electricity and money we don't need to be wasting. Correct.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you all.
Any other questions for Mr. Fuller? All right, do I hear a motion to recommend to the full board the approval of the economic feasibility of a loan issue for Southeast Arkansas College?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn? I think we're done. Second. Finance Committee.